Painting plein air certainly has its challenges and is not for the faint of heart. It takes the everyday challenges that we face in art and amplifies them. All this complexity and more limitations. The light is changing, the tide, and in my case, how to get down this cliff. Today's plein air adventure is on the untamed and rugged Oregon coast. We're here on vacation, my husband and our 4 boys, and we're excited to explore and discover. I, of course, lug my painting stuff everywhere and can't wait to paint here. I want to beat the tide, race the light, to see all the sights, and hopefully take some time to paint too. When starting any art project, but especially painting in plein air, you can easily become overwhelmed by the sensory input, the variety, the scope, and the sheer grandeur of it all. It's just overwhelming. I take a deep breath and I think about what I want to capture today. And one of the things is the carefree, absolute joy that my children experience when we're at the ocean. Painting and drawing is such an immersive experience that takes me back to being a kid again. It's my turn now, so time for another deep breath. Down the cliff I go. Good thing my husband took all of my art supplies for me. As we explore and play, I can't help but think about what I'm going to paint today. There are honestly so many choices. I am going to be sharing with you the things that I look for and what helps me narrow it down when there's just so many wonderful textures and sights to see. The first thing I do is take some time to just really be in the actual place where I'm at and to think about what is the big idea of this day that I want to convey. This is one reason why I personally find art to be so therapeutic. It's perfectly reasonable to take a minute and ask yourself what emotions you're feeling and which emotions are most important to you. We're from Idaho in the high desert where it's so hot and so dry, and the moisture here and the life just teeming everywhere. It's just so fascinating. Honestly, it feels like you could live a lifetime here and never even begin to capture the wonderful sights and sounds and smells and textures. Oh, the textures on these rocks, the moss and the water reflections. And one way to capture the essence of a place is by studying just the tiniest details in a texture study or just a small sketch. Or like this, patterns. I love seeing the patterns in the sand and the patterns in the waves. The way the light reflects off of the water after it's gone over the sand.
Made it. Minimal moisture.
My voice just cracked me up with the things they say. My heart is so full. It has been such a wonderful, beautiful day so far. Once we get back around this cliff into our secret cove, I'm going to start painting. I have narrowed down the possibilities, and there's no wrong choice, by the way. Just go with your gut, take a few reference photos, and get started. I'm especially drawn to the way the shadow side of this cliff is contrasted with the way the mist is being blown up off of the water and kind of becomes a cloud right in front of me. Being from Idaho, this moisture is just fascinating and mysterious to me. As I set up my supplies and begin thinking about this sketch, you had better believe that I am wrestling with myself. There is just so much going on, and I don't want to mess it up. I don't want to not get a good painting here. And at least for me, when I'm on a vacation or a special trip where I'm not going to get to come back to this scene, it puts another layer of pressure on that I put on myself, that I really want to get a good painting here that captures the memories of being here. So I do wrestle with these doubts and insecurities and all of these things too. Starting by sketching out the distant rocks that are the smaller rock formations out in the surf. And then the horizon line, it's really important that your horizon line, you don't place it in the middle of your painting. It's so important to put that either above the middle a little bit or below the middle. I am putting it here, the horizon of the ocean, at about the 1/3 mark of my painting. I personally use the rule of thirds more than any other composition rule, and it just really helps me to keep my paintings from feeling static. If you put a focal point or a really strong line, like a horizon line, in the very middle of your painting, it will just have a really static feeling, because then your areas of your painting are divided in half. Later in the video, I'm going to be sharing with you some of my favorite resources for learning about composition, but I have to confess first that I've lost that footage. I painted for 30 minutes until my kids were ready to go, and I got my painting to that stage, and all of that footage has disappeared. It wasn't saved on my phone, and I'm just sick about it. But now my kids are ready to go, and that's just part of life as a parent and an artist. I'm gonna have to practice what I preach and finish my painting in the studio and just be okay with that. So that was an unexpected limitation that I faced today, and I'm just gonna roll with it. Maybe it's just me, but I think that half the battle in art and in life is to just stay positive and keep going. Plus, our hike out of Pirate Cove is just a magical hike. Such a beautiful place. We say goodbye to the ocean until next time. I'm beginning with the trees at the top of the cliff now that I'm back at home in my studio, and I want this top part of the cliff to feel like it's further away and more obscured by mist, so it's a lighter value, but I want all of the colors to blend together. The colors were so vibrant there, so bright green. Then as it turns to the shadow side of the cliff, I want to make this one wash from midtones to darks. That's my goal for this cliff section, is to just basically do it in one wash. The midtones towards the top with a variety of colors in the wet wash, and then adding in the darks while it's still wet, dropping those in. One of my favorite things about watercolor is the way you can create these color blends on the paper. And the only way that you can really do that is with the paper being wet and dropping in other colors into it, next to it. You can see up on the cliff edge that I've kind of left for now, there's some water beads just kind of hanging there. And my painting surface is at a 15-degree angle, so that edge stays live while I paint around this rock. I'm making sure that I am not making this rock that is highlighted in front of the cliff, making super sure that that is not in the middle of my painting. And here I'm adding nearly pure pigment with very little water. This is an area that I want to be very dark, pointing at that rock that I mentioned earlier that has the highlight on it. Our eyes are generally drawn to focal areas where lightest point and the darkest point of our paintings. If we can get that to meet, then that naturally becomes a focal area. And I promised I would share some of my favorite resources on composition with you guys. So my favorite book that I've read recently on composition is called The Simple Secret to Better Painting: How to Immediately Improve Your Art with This One Rule of Composition by Greg Albert. And I really recommend it because it really has been broken down into simple and easy to understand rules and concepts. And maybe rules isn't really the best word to describe composition, but it's more just understanding the concepts that make compositions work and what are the reasons why we are drawn to and enjoy certain paintings more than others. That's always been something to me that I've wondered, like how do we really know how to do that? And it feels like it's one of those mysterious secret artist things that it's just, this book really does break it down and make it easier to understand, and so I definitely recommend it for everyone to read. So I'm starting to get some dry brush edges as I'm getting closer to the bottom of the cliff, and in some areas that's alright, but I also don't want that to draw your eye too much, so I misted that area so that it's going to stay wet into wet. And now I'm going to go down and start to define where the shadow of this cliff is, as opposed to where then the sun is hitting the beach with full strength. The reason that I did it this way is that I want these to blend together, but I wanted to have a second to kind of clearly define this line of shadow and light, and to just be able to take a minute and think about what size and which variety of rocks I was going to put at that edge. So now I'm bringing those two areas together. They're both still wet, and so that's why I reach for my bigger brush. I want to quickly get those areas to blend and so that the shadow and the edge of the cliff kind of merge together. You can't really see it. It's not a clearly defined edge, it's a soft edge. As I'm beginning to paint all these many pebbles, I am originally thinking about just painting the shadows between the pebbles, painting negative shapes, the little tiny shadows. If you've ever tried to paint a scene like this, you realize it can really quickly become overwhelming, and it can draw your eye as a focal point to all these many busy little shapes. So I was trying to soften each of the edges of the shadows between the rocks. And then I was also trying to give a slight amount of variety between the sizes of the rocks, but not too much. I wanted most of the boulders at the water's edge. Now I'm using this light blue wash to just very gently define the edge of a wave out here beyond the rocks. That is helping to establish that this area around the rocks is very shallow water, and that it's reflecting the sky above us. That's a very deep and clear blue. We don't actually see that in the painting, but that's what the water, the flat still water right here is reflecting. And this is where it's super fun to take some artistic license. In my reference photos, this area is a darker color, but it's kind of brown sand. But I can choose how I want to paint that value, and I can paint it a more blue to reference the sky. And that's just a way to add more feeling to the painting instead of just being tied to what it exactly is in the reference photo. It's really important when you're painting either on site, in plein air, or back in your studio to make choices, especially color choices, that will reflect mood and atmosphere. When you really understand how to use values in your painting, then you have a lot more freedom with your color choices. I will often do a value study or a value sketch quickly to help me understand values. For this painting in particular, I use the Noton app, which is a free app that turns your reference photo into a Noton. I really love this app because with just the slider you can adjust your lights and your darks, and you can also adjust whether or not you have 2 values, 3 values, or 4. And I really love it. It's just a really quick way to visualize where your lights and your darks need to be. Often I will simplify even beyond that a little bit, simplify a lot of the dark shapes and a lot of the midtones into single shapes. These tools are really great, but I also still can't stress enough the importance of making artistic choices. I want to make the rocks feel darker than the reflective sand, and in real life it might have been a similar value, but it's a choice to keep the focus towards the middle of the painting. Our eyes are just naturally drawn to areas of light, and so by making the rocks, the really rocky area, an overall value that is darker than the reflective sand, continues to reinforce my goal of not making these rocks be the focal point of my painting. It's one of those tricky areas where I am implying detail. My goal is to imply the detail and fill this space, but it not to overwhelm the rest of the painting. As I am painting, I am reliving the experience of being on the coast, and I'm always asking myself if I am achieving the goal of capturing this environment and this memory. And the goals that I had when I started out were capture the emotions and the memories that I had at Pirate Cove. The moisture and the water and the sounds and the tides, all of these things come together and have just created a wonderful memory for me. So more than anything, I hope this video has encouraged you to pick up your paints or a sketchbook and pencil and just head outside and paint or draw something. I think there's so much value to be had in experiencing our world in this way. In this video, I have some new challenges and solve them in new ways. I think you might like it. See you there.